Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming for the late and very specific talk of the day. So my name is Edmo. I'm a software engineer at Elastic, and today you're going to see how to get OTel collector transformation right, how to test it and how to debug it. All right, so before we get started, let's get a few assumptions out of the way. We just have 10 minutes today, so I'm assuming you know what the OpenTelemetry Collector is, you know what OpenTelemetry is as well, you know what logs, trace, and metrics are, and we have used OTTL before, and I hope you're not here because you want to get that right. Okay, so that's the question I'm going to try to answer today, how to get OTTL right, how to get your data transformation right. So let's remove a few options that we're not going to see today. We are not going to see today. Yeah, there's no magic trick for solving that, unfortunately. I wish we had, but no relation to the previous talk as well. And no AI. Unfortunately, we don't have an assistant that solves all the issues for us. It would be fantastic, but we don't. Unfortunately, if you have an idea, you can use the logo. It's not copyrighted. OK, instead, we're going to focus on a few and very simple tools that are available inside the collector and another tool that is the playground. So let's go over all of them pretty quickly. So the debug exporter, you might be wondering how this can help me to troubleshoot OTTL. So this is a well-known tool, a well-known exporter that is widely used by the collector users already. And this exporter, this exporter has a setting that's called verbosity. And when you set that to detailed, you're going to start to see some telemetry data being printed to the console. So that data shows your telemetry data, some textual representation of that data. And you can use that for either check the data shape. You need to understand that for being able to manipulate the data. It's going to show the field names, attribute names. So double check that if that is correct, your statements are targeting that data. And also, if you did some changes on the data, it should be printed there as well. So this is a very good exporter and can be your first step for troubleshooting your data transformation. But that's just for simple use cases. If you have some complex transformation or you're doing a lot of things on your or the statements, you're definitely going to need to dive into debug logs. Yeah, everyone loves debug logs. And they show what's happening inside the collector. They show how the transformation is being executed and show a digit trail of that changes. We're going to see them later. Don't worry about them right now. All you need to know that for enabling that, you need to set the service telemetry logs to debug. Then you're going to see those logs being emitted. And finally, not going to do a demo today using the collector. I'm not brave enough for that. But we're going to using another tool that's the OTTL playground. If you're not familiar with this tool, it's a web UI that allows you to experiment with OTTL processors. And you can run that directly on the browser. You don't need to run a collector. And it gives some visual GIF of the data, the changes, and debug logs out of the box. And it's built with WebAssembly, which means that the data, the logs you're going to see there is pretty much the same as running a live collectors. And that's why you're going to use that today. But before, let's do a quick recap on a very important topic for OTTL, which is the OTTL context. So statements run in a kind of context glasses that tell OTTL what part of the data it should be accessed. So if I want to access data point data, I should definitely use the data point context. If I want to access data point data, but I also need the metric name, I should still use the data point context because the data point context has access to the metric. A data point belongs to a metric, and OTTL knows which metric that data point belongs to. The other way around is not possible. If I'm using the metric context and I'm trying to access a data point field, that's not possible because a metric can have multiple fields, and OTTL doesn't know which one you are referring to. I might have like different data points, which one we're trying to access here. So that is not possible. And of course, we can only manipulate what's inside the collector, only p-data, not raw payloads, not anything that you are sending to the collector. All right, so let's do a live demo now. What can be wrong? Starting with the image. Cool. All right, so this example is pretty simple. I hope you can see that well, otherwise I can increase the, that's better, yeah? Okay, so this is pretty simple. We are just setting the log server number to 17, which means error, if the body of the log contains the word error on it. That's pretty simple, and if you're not familiar with the playground, you need to select the component on the top of the screen, the version. Here's where the configuration goes, and just down here we have the log payloads that want to test, or metrics, or traces, or whatever you are experimenting. It supports different views. We're going to be looking at the execution logs one today, which is essentially the same as the debug logs, where you're just going to get logs from this execution, not from the whole collector, not from our components, just the components we are testing, which makes our life much easier. So I hit the run button, and we got a few lines there, the same lines you're going to get on the collector. Don't ignore them, they are very useful. That's why they are there. And I'm going to try to explain what they are showing here and how those lines can be useful for you. So the first one, it's showing what's called the initial transform context before executing the statement. So this is showing the data that we are transforming, this payload, the logs, before running the statement, which means that the initial data without changes. And that's pretty useful because you're going to see the next line here. We got the same data after running the statement, which means that I can compare. I can take a look at the data that I have here and compare with the previous line, so I can determine exactly what changed. So I can double check everything. Yeah. There is another field here that's really, really important and useful, which is the condition matched. And this field says, it shows if the condition that I have on my statement, in this case this, match the data that I'm transforming, or the data that is currently being processed. In this case, it says true, which means that the set operation worked. So it's indeed set 17. So we don't need to worry about this statement, but let's check the last one. So the last one is pretty much the same. We got the statement here. But in this case, the conditions say it didn't match. So if it didn't match, it didn't transform. So if we're expecting the log to be changed and it is not showing us changed, probably because your condition is not right. In our case here, we can drop the lines and take a look at the body of this log. If we look at the body there, we do have the word error on it, but that's in our case, which our regex is not considering. So if you fix that, I'm going to fix that. Just ignore the case. And I'm going to run again. And now, that same log that before was saying false is saying true. And if you check the server number, the log also shows that. It's now 17, and before it was 0, which means unassigned. And looking at the visual GIF, we are seeing exactly what we saw on the log. So it's pretty much the same, but a summary on the changes. So yeah, so this is it for its example. It's probably right. You might test other cases, but we're not going to do that today. So the second one, we are just adding some metric metadata called type. So I'm going to set the histogram if the type of my metric is a histogram. Yeah, let's just run that and see what the playground shows. OK, we got here a new metric metadata that looks correct. So I'm going to mark the option, and I'm going to see all the data here. We can see that the first metric that I got, the attribute, is a histogram. And the second one is a counter, and the second one didn't get any new attribute, which means that this transformation is right. So we don't have anything to fix here, maybe. But let's take a look on that number on the right of the screen. That shows the execution time. That's definitely not precise. It's WebAssembly, not the collector. But it's pretty useful to compare the performance. So have an idea on how good that is or how bad that is. 95 is too much, definitely too much. And let's take a look what the log says. So the log says we have run that statement over and over again 100 times. It's not a problem, but the question is, do we need to run that transformation all the times? Maybe not. So let's take a look at the statement again. Looking at the statement, I can see that I'm using the metric metadata data path and the metric type. but I'm not using data point. But the context that I'm using here is data point. So we are telling OTTL, go through all the metrics, go through all the data points, and run this statement that doesn't need any data from data point. Why? We don't need to do that. We can use a more specific context. So if you change the context here to the proper context, which should be metric, and run again, we can see that the time that it took to run is considerably low, which makes sense because it's much more efficient. And we are just seeing 2 logs there, which means that we run the statement twice, which is expected for this example. So choosing the right context is important for changing the right data, but also to ensure that we are running that in an efficient way. All right. Oops. All right, so the key takeaways of this session is the most important part is we need to understand the data we are changing. Yeah. Sometimes you just write some statement, expect that to work, but that doesn't work like that. So you need to know that we have the same issues we have with like a SQL database where you have tables, we have a reference. Here's the same. If I change the resource while I'm processing the logs, that change will apply to all the logs. So I need to understand that the data is live. The P data that flows through the collector is live. So we need to understand the data model before start writing anything. Then we need to use those tools. We don't need to memorize recipes for problems that we might have. We just need to know that those tools give all the answers that we need. The debug logs is very rich, and they will provide anything that you need to know. And if you don't know that data shape before writing any statement, just look at the debug exporter. It's going to show you the data shape, and you're going to have a good idea. And the playground definitely make that easy for testing. You can extract all the possibilities, all the edge cases that you have just running on the browser without spinning a collector and without risking your production environment. And if you suffer of something called OTTL rage, that I heard before, just ask on the CNCF auto collector channel. We are glad to help to solve any issue. You heard that also. All right. So if you want to learn more, here I'm going to leave a few codes so you can scan and read the docs. That's also important. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.